The first thing Gideon Mercer saw wasn't blood. It was shame. A young woman lay twisted on the sunburned grass near the Smoky Hill River, her wrists bound tight, her ankles pulled back, her torn white dress clinging to her skin like it had lost the will to protect her. The Kansas heat pressed down on her bare legs, the wind lifting the fabric just enough to steal what little dignity she had left. Her face was flushed, not only from pain, but from humiliation so raw it made breathing look like work. Gideon froze where he stood. 48 years on the plains had shown him death, hunger, and men torn apart by cattle and bullets. But this was different. This was a woman left alive on purpose, posed like a warning, abandoned in daylight where anyone could see her. She saw him then. Her eyes widened in terror, then squeezed shut as if the world itself had become unbearable. Her voice came out broken and uneven. "Don't look there." The words were weak, embarrassed, and pleading. Not a cry for help, but a plea for mercy. Gideon felt his chest lock. He did not know where to look, so he looked nowhere at all. He stared at the horizon, jaw clenched, hands shaking like a boy caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. The woman shifted slightly, the ropes biting into her skin, and the movement made her gasp. It was clear now. She had been stripped of more than her belongings. Whatever modest clothing she once wore underneath had been taken, leaving her exposed in a way no decent person would ever choose. Gideon pulled the blanket from his saddle and tossed it toward her without looking back. "Don't move," he said softly. His voice cracked despite himself. The blanket landed over her legs. She let out a breath that sounded like relief mixed with sobbing. Dust clung to her cheeks, and tears cut pale lines through the dirt on her face. She tried to curl inward, but the rope stopped her short. The silence between them was heavy. Only the sound of grasshoppers and the distant stamp of Gideon's horse filled the air. This wasn't an accident. No storm had done this. No wild animal. Someone had taken time. Someone had meant for her to be found exactly like this. As Gideon finally knelt to cut the ropes at her ankles, her voice trembled again. "Please, don't look." He nodded, though she could not see it. But in that moment, with the heat beating down and the open land watching in silence, one thought struck him harder than any bullet. If she was left here alive, ashamed, and terrified, then what kind of man was meant to find her, and what was supposed to happen next if he did? So here's the question that changes everything. Was she only a victim left behind, or was she the beginning of something far more dangerous meant for him? Gideon kept his eyes on the horizon like it was the only decent thing left to stare at. He slid his knife out slow, not to scare her, just to get the job done. His voice stayed low. "Ma'am, I'm going to cut the ropes. I won't look. I promise." She swallowed hard under the blanket. "I didn't mean for anyone to see me like this," she said. And then she let out a breath that sounded like a laugh that hurt. "Guess that ship sailed." She tried to joke, but her voice shook, like humor was the only way she could keep from breaking. Gideon snorted once. Quiet. "Yeah, well, I've had worse mornings, but not by much." He reached behind him and grabbed his canteen, still facing away, and held it out like a man offering peace. "Take a sip." "Small one. Don't choke." Her hand trembled as it found the canteen. She drank, then coughed, then gave a tiny angry sigh. "Warm as bath water," she muttered. "Welcome to Kansas," Gideon said. "It does that in summer." That little bit of normal talk did something important. It made her feel human again, not just a poor thing left on the grass. Her breathing slowed. Her shoulders dropped a fraction. The blanket stayed tight around her like it was the last good thing in the world. "I'm Mabel," she said. "Most folks call me May." "Gideon," he answered. "Friends call me Gid. You can call me whatever gets you through the next 5 minutes." She almost laughed again, then winced. The ropes had dug deep, and the skin around her wrists looked raw and swollen. Gideon felt that old ranch anger rise in him, the kind that starts in your gut and climbs to your throat. Somebody did this on purpose. Somebody tied those knots like they had time, and like they enjoyed it. May spoke like she hated every word. "They took my bag, my shoes, and what little modesty I had left just to be cruel." Gideon's jaw tightened. He still did not look. He reached back, found a second strip of cloth from his saddle roll, and slid it toward her. Wrap that around your shoulders. There's no honor in the wind getting a better view than it deserves. May pulled the cloth around herself, and for a second she sounded almost like a regular young woman. If you tell anyone you saw me like this, I'll haunt your barn. I'll rattle every bucket you own, Gideon huffed. Ma'am, if you can haunt, you don't need my help. But I'd appreciate you haunting the men who did this first. She went quiet again. Then she whispered, I was headed for Abilene, the depot. I work there sometimes. They said I heard something I shouldn't. Gideon's eyes narrowed. Abilene wasn't just cattle and whiskey. It was gossip, money, and men who smiled while they stole. He shifted his weight and finally lowered himself to one knee. Still looking away, still careful. All right, May, I'm going to cut the knot at your ankles, and then we get you out of this sun. May's voice jumped, sharp with panic and embarrassment. Don't look there. Gideon turned his face even farther away, and right then, something snapped through the air. The dirt beside his knee exploded like a fist hit the ground. Who just shot at him? Gideon didn't answer the question out loud. He just reacted. He grabbed a fistful of grass and yanked himself sideways. Then he reached back and pulled May down flat behind him, blanket and all. May let out a sharp little squeak like a startled rabbit, then clamped her mouth shut. Another crack popped from somewhere up on the rise. A second puff of dust jumped a few feet away, close enough that Gideon felt grit hit his cheek. Stay low, he whispered, like you're a fence post. Fence posts don't get shot at. Most days. May's voice came out tiny. I was hoping my day would end before the shooting part. Me too, Gideon muttered. But Kansas don't always ask what you're hoping. He kept his eyes down, but he listened hard. He heard a faint shuffle in the grass, the way sound carries when the air's hot and dry. He also caught the thin smell of burnt powder, drifting on the wind. That told him the shooter wasn't a mile off. They were close enough to feel bold. Gideon slid his knife into his palm, then felt around under the blanket until he found May's bound ankles. He still didn't look. He cut the rope with 2 quick pulls, then pressed the knife handle into her hand. Hold it. Don't wave it around. Just hold it like it's the last piece of sense you've got. May's fingers closed on it, shaking. I've never stabbed anyone, she whispered. Good, Gideon said. Let's keep your record clean today. He crawled, slow and steady. Using the slight dip in the ground, he tugged May with him, inch by inch, like pulling a sack of feed across a barn floor. It wasn't graceful. It was survival. When they reached a patch of taller grass near the creek bank, Gideon finally risked a glance uphill. He didn't see a man, but he saw what mattered. A wisp of smoke, thin as a thread, and a quick flicker of sunlight off metal. Then nothing. Someone's up there, he murmured. And they're patient. May swallowed. They left me out there. They wanted you to find me. That landed heavy. Gideon felt the anger rise again, hotter than the summer sun. A grown man could handle a feud, but using a young woman like a trap, that was low even for frontier trash. He leaned close to May, keeping his voice calm. Listen, we're going to move along the creek bed. It's messy, but it's lower. We get to my line shack, then we talk. And you tell me everything you heard at that depot. May nodded, eyes wide. Okay, she whispered. But Gid, there's one more thing. He paused. What thing? She stared past him, toward the rise, and her voice turned shaky. I saw him before. Not today. Not out on the prairie. I saw him around your place. If you're still with me, do me a favor. Tap subscribe real quick so you don't miss how this turns out. And go ahead and sip your tea or coffee. Get comfortable. Then tell me what time it is for you right now and where you're listening from. Gideon didn't ask her to say the name out loud. He didn't need to. The look on May's face told him enough. It was the look folks get when they recognize danger, not from rumor, but from memory. Someone she had seen before, someone who smiled at her in daylight. They moved along the creek bed slow and low, water soaking Gideon's boots and cooling the dust on their skin. Gideon reached back and slipped the reins off his horse. He gave the gelding one sharp pat and sent him trotting hard toward home. If that horse hit the Mercer corral alone, the old hands would know something was wrong. May kept the blanket tight, teeth clenched, doing her best not to shake, wet and rattled from shock. Every sound felt louder down there. Frogs, insects, the soft scrape of boots on mud. Gideon hated that feeling. It meant eyes were watching. When they reached the line shack, Gideon waved her inside first. It wasn't anything special. 4 walls, a crooked door, and a smell of old hay and sweat, but it was shade, and shade meant breathing room. He barred the door and finally turned his back fully to her. "There's a clean shirt on that peg," he said. "Put it on. Take your time." May did not answer right away. Then he heard fabric move, followed by a shaky breath that sounded almost like relief. "Thank you," she said. Not loud, not dramatic, just real. Gideon sat on an upturned crate and wiped his face. "All right," he said. "Now tell me what you meant back there." May's voice came steadier now that the door was shut. "I work the depot desk some afternoons. I file papers. I listen more than I talk. Men forget a woman is in the room when they think she doesn't matter." Gideon nodded. That part he understood well. "I heard names," she continued. "Schedules, livestock numbers. One man kept saying your ranch was in the way, said you were stubborn, said you wouldn't sell." Gideon felt his stomach tighten. "Who said it?" May hesitated. Then she said it. "The man giving orders. He wore the same brand as your hands. The Flying M." Gideon didn't move, but his face changed, like a door inside him just shut. The name hit like a kick to the ribs. Cole had eaten at his table, rode his fences, shook his hand every morning like a man with nothing to hide. Gideon stood slowly. "That don't make sense," he said, though part of him already knew it did. "Cole knows this land. He knows me." May swallowed. "That's why he's dangerous," she said. "He knew you'd come looking. He knew where you'd kneel. Outside." A horse snorted, then another. Boots shifted on dry ground, not rushed, not loud. Men who believed they were in control. Gideon reached for his rifle and checked the chamber. His face was calm now, the way it got before a storm. "Looks like Cole brought company," he said. May stepped closer, fear and resolve mixing in her eyes. "Kid," she whispered. "He didn't want your land, kid. He wanted to watch you break. So here's the question that hangs in the air. When the door opens, will Gideon face a hired gun or the man he trusted most in the world? The door did not open all at once. It creaked, slow, like the shack itself didn't want to be part of what was coming. A voice came through first, calm and familiar. "Gid, come on out. No need for this." It was Cole Drayton. Same voice Gideon had heard 100 times at sunrise. The kind of voice you trust without thinking, because it sounds like work and coffee and routine. Gideon stood near the wall, rifle held low, not pointed yet. May stayed behind him, wrapped tight, holding herself together with pure grit. Gideon spoke back steady. "Cole, why are you here?" A pause, then a soft chuckle. "Because you're a good man, and good men don't know when to step aside." That sentence did something strange. It didn't just make Gideon angry, it made him sad, because it told him Cole had been watching his decency like it was a weakness. Gideon opened the door a hand width, enough to see, not enough to invite trouble. Cole stood outside with 2 riders behind him, guns resting easy like they owned the afternoon. Cole's eyes went past Gideon, searching for May. When he saw the blanket, he smiled like a man pleased his bait still had a hook in it. He'd seen that same torn white dress at the depot, and now he knew she hadn't died out there. Gideon's voice dropped. "You did that to her?" Cole shrugged. "She listened where she shouldn't. You found her like I knew you would." Gideon's voice stayed flat. "I built this place with my own 2 hands, Cole. You want it. You'll have to bury me on it." May made a small sound, half fear, half disgust. Gideon lifted one hand behind him, a quiet signal for her to stay still. Then he looked at Cole and said something he didn't even know he had in him. No, just one word, but it landed like a hammer. Cole's smile faded. You sure about that? Gideon nodded. I'm sure, because a man who trades people like cattle ain't a man. He's just a problem that's gone too long. In that moment, May understood something, and maybe you did too. Courage isn't loud. It doesn't always ride in with music. Sometimes it's a tired rancher in a crooked shack, choosing to protect a stranger because it's the right thing. Cole's riders shifted. Hands drifted closer to leather. The air went tight. Then a horse screamed outside, and boots hit the dirt fast. Old ranch hands. Men Gideon had worked beside for 20 years. One of them barked. Gid's gelding came home alone. Where's Gid? Another voice followed, rough and steady. Everybody drop your irons right now. Cole, I branded calves with you 20 years ago. Don't make me shoot a man I once called friend. A moment later, the town marshal pushed in behind them, breathing hard like he'd been riding mean and fast. He took one look at Cole, and his eyes went flat. Not heroes from a dime novel, just locals with steady eyes who'd decided they weren't going to let cruelty run their county. Cole froze. For the first time, the man who thought he owned the game realized he was standing in the open. Cole was taken in, May was safe, and Gideon sat on that crate after it was over, shaking a little. Not from fear, but from the weight of what could have happened. May looked at him and whispered, You didn't have to. Gideon answered, Yeah, I did. That's the whole point. He looked out past the door, where the late sun was sinking behind the low hills. Some things are worth standing for, even when your knees shake. Here's the lesson that lingers. The world will test you. It will try to teach you that looking away is easier, but every time you choose decency, you pull the world back from the edge a little. So let me ask you, if you were Gideon, would you have opened that door? And if you were May, would you still believe people can be good after what she went through? If this story gave you something to think about, tap like and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in Gideon's place?